Welcome to Mimir Library, where timeless stories find their voice.
This is Chapter 3 of Waves Between Us by Amir Honarmand. Enjoy!
The darkness held its own kind of beauty. Alara clutched her keys tightly, their familiar edges pressing into her palm as she walked along the deserted shoreline toward Tatli mornings. The pre-dawn air wrapped around her like cool silk, carrying the scent of damp pebbles and salt. She breathed deeply, letting the quiet serenity of this hour fill her lungs. The beach belonged to no one and everyone at this hour. No sunbathers, no tourists with their colorful umbrellas, just the endless stretch of shore meeting the Mediterranean in rhythmic whispers. Her mind buzzed with nervous energy despite the early hour. She tossed and turned most of the night, replaying her conversation with Liam and second-guessing her decision. "It's just business," she reminded herself again, the same words she'd repeated like a mantra while preparing for bed. But the flutter in her stomach suggested otherwise. She was at the door of her cafe, stood silhouetted against the indigo sky. In a few hours, the deck would be filled with the cheerful chaos of customers, laughter, and the scent of fresh gozleme. For now, though, she savored this peaceful moment before her workday began, her private ritual. Except she wasn't alone. A solitary figure stood near the water's edge, a dark shape against the faintly lightening horizon. A tripod was set up beside him, aimed at the point where the sea met the sky. The sight of someone in her space, her quiet, private morning space, sent a small jolt through her. Liam. He was early. As if sensing her presence, he turned. Even in the dim light, she could make out his smile, a gentle curve that seemed to soften the boundary between them. He raised a hand in quiet greeting. "Didn't want to be late," he said softly as she approached, his voice barely carrying above the gentle lap of waves against the shore. The quiet intimacy of his tone sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "You're very early," she replied, her voice matching his in volume, as if they both instinctively understood the sanctity of the pre-dawn hush. "Best light happens before most people are awake." He gestured toward the eastern horizon, where the faintest blush of color was beginning to stain the darkness. "I hope you don't mind." Alara found herself shaking her head. Strangely, his presence didn't feel like the intrusion she might have expected. There was something respectful in the way he stood, not claiming the space, but appreciating it. He reached down beside the tripod and lifted a thermos. "Peace offering? I made some coffee, though I apologize in advance if it's not up to your standards." The unexpected gesture caught her off guard. She accepted the small cup he offered, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The coffee was strong and black, exactly how she preferred it. "It's good," she said, genuinely surprised. They fell into silence then, standing side by side facing the horizon. The quiet between them felt comfortable, unforced. No need for small talk or explanations, just two people sharing the same moment of anticipation as the world prepared to transform itself. The sky shifted gradually, almost barely noticeable at first. Deep indigo softened to violet. Violet gave way to dusty lavender. Alara sipped her coffee, feeling the warmth spread through her body as the cold air nipped at her cheeks. Liam occasionally adjusted his camera, but otherwise remained still beside her. His presence felt solid, yet undemanding. She found herself sneaking glances at his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way the emerging light caught in his sandy hair. The horizon line began to glow with intense orange, pushing back the darkness. Fingers of gold stretched across the sky, painting the bottoms of scattered clouds with brilliant color. The sea transformed from black to deep sapphire, the surface catching fire with reflected light. Liam's camera clicked softly, capturing the moment, but his eyes remained fixed on the actual view rather than just its image. Alara appreciated that. How he seemed to understand that some experiences needed to be lived first, captured second. When the sun finally broke over the distant mountains, it sent a brilliant golden path across the water's surface, a luminous bridge stretching from the horizon directly to the shore where they stood. The sudden intensity of beauty made Alara catch her breath. "Worth getting up for," Liam murmured, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "Every time," she agreed. They watched in reverent silence as the full disk of the sun cleared the mountains, bathing the entire coastline in warm light. The pebbles at their feet, wet with morning dew, sparkled like scattered gems. "I should open up," Alara said eventually, though she made no immediate move to leave. Liam nodded, gathering his thermos but leaving his camera in place. "Thank you for sharing this. Not everyone appreciates a good sunrise." Something in his words made her turn to face him fully. His blue eyes held hers, sincere and warm in the golden light. For a moment, all her carefully constructed walls, the professional distance she planned to maintain, felt suddenly fragile. "I open at this hour because I need the quiet, before the noise of the day begins." "I understand completely." The simple response carried genuine recognition, not just polite acknowledgement. They walked together toward the cafe, their footsteps crunching softly on the pebbles. The air between them had shifted somehow, a quiet understanding established without words. Whatever business arrangement they'd made yesterday had already evolved into something else, something Alara couldn't quite name but could definitely feel. As she unlocked the door to Totley mornings, keys still warm from being clutched in her palm, she realized that letting Liam O'Connell into her morning ritual hadn't diminished it. Somehow, in the shared silence and mutual appreciation for the dawn's beauty, they'd established a foundation of comfort and respect that no amount of conversation could have built. She pushed open the door, letting the familiar scents of her cafe welcome them both in. Totley morning's interior greeted her with familiar shadows and silence, the dark shapes of tables and chairs, waiting patiently for the day to begin. The scent of yesterday's spices and baking still lingered faintly in the air.
Behind her, Liam's footsteps paused at the threshold. "Should I?" He gestured vaguely with his camera. "We already agreed, so no need to ask," she said. "Although, I need to start the prep." The space felt different with him in it. Smaller somehow, yet more significant. Alara moved to the back counter, fully aware of his presence as she tied her apron strings. Her sanctuary now had a witness. She reached for the large bag of flour, measuring cups into a wide bowl with precision. The motions were so familiar she could do them in her sleep. Yet today her hands felt strangely stiff, self-conscious. The quiet click of Liam's camera as he adjusted settings only heightened her awareness. "I usually play music," she said, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet space. "But I thought it might interfere with your work." "Play it," Liam said, moving quietly along the perimeter of the room. "I want to capture what's real, not a performance." Alara nodded, grateful for the chance to fill the silence. She tapped her phone, and soft Turkish folk music flowed through the small speaker on the shelf. The familiar melody immediately loosened something in her shoulders. She bent to retrieve the large circular sack from beneath the counter, lifting it onto the stovetop. The heavy metal griddle made a satisfying thunk as it settled into place. As she turned on the flame beneath it, she caught Liam capturing a shot of her hands. The soft click of his camera shutter felt intrusive at first, making her movements wooden and deliberate. She was used to being watched by customers, but this was different, more intimate, more intentional. Every gesture was being preserved, immortalized. "Just pretend I'm not here," he said, seeming to sense my discomfort. "Easier said than done," I replied, measuring olive oil into the flour mixture. Liam smiled, but said nothing, stepping back to capture a wider angle of the kitchen. His movements were quiet, almost cat-like in their grace. He kept to the edges of the room, a respectful shadow. Gradually, the familiar rhythm of her work began to take over. Her hands remembered their purpose, kneading the dough with increasing confidence. The repetitive motion became meditative, and the soft clicking of Liam's camera receded into the background, blending with the music and the gentle hiss of the heating sack. She forgot herself in the work, her focus narrowing to the feel of dough beneath her palms, the precise amount of pressure needed to stretch it thin without tearing. When she reached for the spice jars, her fingers found them without looking, measuring pinches of sumac and some other spices into small bowls for later use. The first coffee of the day was a ritual she particularly cherished. Alara ground the beans, inhaling their rich aroma as she packed the grounds into the filter. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled, releasing a stream of dark liquid into the waiting cup. She lifted the cup to her lips, closing her eyes as she took the first sip. The bitter warmth spread through her, centering her for the day ahead. Only when she opened her eyes did she remember Liam was there, his camera capturing this private moment of pleasure. Instead of feeling exposed, she found herself oddly touched that he had recognized the significance of this small ritual. "You look like you're tasting the meaning of life," he said softly, lowering his camera. "The first coffee is sacred," I replied, offering him the second cup she'd automatically prepared. Their fingers brushed as he took it, a brief point of warmth in the cool morning air. As the sunlight strengthened, filtering through the eastern windows, Liam moved around the space with increasing confidence. He captured the flour dusting her forearms, the intense concentration in her eyes as she measured spices, the small, satisfied nod she gave after tasting a filling mixture. "That silver necklace, you touch it when you're concentrating. Is it special?" Alara's hand went automatically to the pendant. "My grandmother's. She taught me to cook." He nodded, not pushing for more, but something in his understanding expression made her want to continue. "She made the best gozleme in Antalya. People still mention her when they come here." She rolled another circle of dough, thinner and more perfect than the last. "What about your ring? I noticed it yesterday." Liam glanced down at the simple silver band on his finger, turning it absently. "My grandfather's. He was a fisherman in Ireland, also a storyteller, the best I've ever known." The unexpected connection, both of them carrying a piece of their heritage, their teachers, created a moment of quiet understanding between them. Alara found herself smiling as she turned back to her work, no longer stiff or self-conscious.
As the morning progressed, the camera's presence became less intrusive. Liam moved with surprising grace for his height, anticipating her movements rather than interrupting them. When she needed to reach the shelf behind him, he was already stepping aside. When she moved to the sink, he shifted to capture the light falling across her hands as she washed them. "You're good at this," she admitted, sprinkling cheese across a stretched circle of dough. "I've had practice." His voice held no arrogance, just simple acknowledgement. "People forget I'm there eventually. That's when the real moments happen." The real moments. Alara considered this as she folded the dough over its belling, sealing the edges with practiced fingers. There was something profoundly respectful in how he approached his work, not directing or interfering, but observing and honoring. When she looked up from the counter, she caught him watching her with an expression that wasn't purely professional, something warmer, more appreciative. He quickly lifted his camera, but not before she'd seen it. "The light on your face just then," he explained, but they both knew it was more than that.
By the time Sevlin arrived to help with the opening, Alara had forgotten to feel observed. The camera's soft clicking had become part of the cafe's morning soundtrack, as natural as the sizzle of dough hitting the hot sock or the gentle percussion of knife against cutting board. When Liam finally lowered his camera and sat at the counter, Alara placed a perfect gozleme before him, her first of the day, still steaming. "For the photographer," she said, considering herself, the warmth in her voice. "Consider it payment for your discretion." He took a bite, his eyes closing briefly in appreciation. Worth every moment of silence. As she turned to greet Sevlin, Alara realized something had shifted. She had allowed Liam into her sanctuary, and instead of diminishing it, his presence had somehow expanded it. Her craft, her passion, the thing she was most proud of, had been seen and respected. The cafe would open in 20 minutes, bringing its usual cheerful chaos of customers and conversations. But this quiet morning with just the two of them in her space had created something unexpected. A foundation of trust, a shared appreciation for craft and legacy. And as Alara caught Liam's eye across the counter, his camera temporarily beside him, she wondered what else might grow from this unexpected beginning. Alara leaned against the counter, sipping her second coffee of the day. The morning rush was still an hour away, and she'd made good progress with the prep work. Sunlight now streamed fully through the eastern windows, painting the wooden floors with warm golden rectangles. Her body felt pleasantly tired from the early start, but her mind was surprisingly alert. Across the room, Liam sat at a small table, his camera temporarily at rest beside him. He scrolled through the morning shots on his digital display, his brow raised in concentration. Occasionally, his lips would curve into a small, satisfied smile at something he had captured. "The light on your face just then," he said, without looking up, his voice thoughtful in the quiet cafe. "It's a lovely piece." Alara's hand instinctively went to the delicate silver chain at her throat, her fingers finding the familiar form and outline of the necklace. The metal was warm against her skin, having absorbed her body heat through the morning's work. "Thank you," she said, a genuine warmth filling her voice. Liam looked up, his attention fully on her now. Something in his expression encouraged her to continue. "She gave it to me when I was 16. She said it was to remind me to always put love into my food, that the secret ingredient in any dish worth eating wasn't in the spice jars." The memory brought a smile to her face. Her grandmother's kitchen was smaller than this one, but somehow contained an entire world of flavors and wisdom. Liam looked down to his own hand, at the simple, worn silver band on his ring finger. He turned it absently, a gesture he had noticed him repeat throughout the morning. "It reminds me of this," he said, holding his hand up slightly. His voice softened, taking on a distant quality as if reaching back through time. He used to say this ring held more stories than he did, that he'd collected them all at sea and stored them here for safekeeping. Liam's finger traced the band's worn surface. He wore it every day of his adult life. "It has all these tiny nicks and scratches from decades of hard work." Alara moved closer, genuinely interested. "Is that why you became a photographer? The stories?" Liam nodded, his blue eyes brightening. "I think so. He could make you see things with just his words. I wanted to do the same with images." He looked down at the ring again. "When he died, my grandmother gave it to me, said I was the one who'd understand its value." Alara felt a surge of recognition flow through her. Here was someone who understood what it meant to carry a piece of your heritage with you, not just as jewelry, but as a tangible connection to those who had shaped you. "My grandmother's recipes weren't written down. She measured everything by eye, by feel. I spent years watching her, trying to learn her secrets before they disappeared." She touched the necklace again. "Sometimes when I'm cooking, I can almost feel her hand guiding me." Their eyes met across the counter, and something shifted in the air between them. It wasn't just professional respect or casual attraction anymore. There was a deeper recognition, an understanding that they shared something fundamental despite their different worlds. They were both keepers of legacies, both carrying the love of those who came before them, transformed into silver touchstones they wore every day. The Turkish girl whose love of food came from her grandmother, and an American's whose love of stories came from his Irish grandfather. A moment of silence hung between them, comfortable and weighted with meaning. Alara felt as if a bridge had suddenly materialized, connecting their separate islands. "I've met a lot of people in my travels," Liam said finally, his voice gentle. "But it's rare to find someone who understands this." He gestured between them. "The importance of roots, of carrying forward what matters." Alara nodded, suddenly aware that her heart was beating a little bit faster. Most people are too busy looking forward to remember what's behind them. Or beside them, Liam added, his eyes holding hers. The moment stretched between them, neither willing to break it. The morning sunlight caught in Liam's sandy hair, giving him a golden halo. Alara wondered if he was capturing her in the same light, storing her image alongside all his other collected moments. For the first time since meeting him, Alara didn't see Liam as just a photographer or a tourist passing through. He was someone who understood value beyond the surface, who recognized that the most precious things often came with stories etched into their very fabric. "I should finish the prep," she said, finally, though she made no immediate move to return to work. Liam nodded, picking up his camera again. But before he raised it, he smiled, a smile that reached all the way to those blue eyes and contained a new warmth of recognition. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For sharing your story, for understanding mine." As Alara turned back to her work, she felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of her private world was easier to carry now that it had been witnessed and understood. The silver at her throat seemed to glow warmer, her grandmother's presence more tangible than it had been in years.
The story ends here, but the library is always open. Subscribe for more free audiobooks.